And our last but not least guest today is Russian journalist and documentary filmmaker Ekaterina Arkalova, who will discuss the consequences of Kiev's crackdown on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. She will report on what she saw with her own eyes and what her interlocutors shared. For anyone interested in understanding this topic, I recommend watching Ekaterina's documentary named Your Will, which is about destroyed holy sites and the unbreakable spirit of Donbas. The video will be available via QR code in the materials from our meeting. These are real people and real tragedies. Ekaterina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to bring you some facts and data that I gathered during my work as a special correspondent and documentary filmmaker on the territories of the Donetsk People's Republic, Luhansk People's Republic, and Zaporizhzhia. Everything that I'm going to tell you is something I saw personally. I spoke to eyewitnesses and I took photo and video. In November 2022, I began to work as a war correspondent on the territory of Zaporizhzhia Oblast. First thing I found out about was in Melitopol. In December 2021, in the city, with the support of the current administration, a Dontsov Fest was held. This is an event to involve young people in neo-Nazi organizations in honor of Dontsov. Dontsov is a Ukrainian nationalist author who honors Banda rights alongside honored by Banda rights alongside Bandera himself. According to his work, a person, if they're Ukrainian, Bulgarian, an Englishman, or from any country in the world, they can become a Ukrainian nationalist. Essentially, any citizen of the world that signs on to hate Russians can stand in the ranks of the new neo-Ukrainian Nazi of Russophobes. He essentially adapted the Austrian developments of Ukrainian nationalism. In honor of that person, the Ukrainian Greco-Catholic Church, with the support of the authorities and a number of extremist organizations, organized nationalist festivals, and that was only in Melitopol. In December 2022, I came across a brochure called Vierit, Believe, that was written by some Ivan Altinsky. This literature is full of gross extrapolations of religious ideas onto historic facts. This and similar brochures were circulated en masse by the Ukrainian Greco-Catholic Church and affiliated organizations before 2022 on the territory of Zaporizhzhia. Specifically, this brochure was published in 1990. On the cover, Ukraine includes Voronezh and Rostov Oblast, Krasnodar and Brest Oblast in Belarus. And this is reminiscent of the maps that Russian officers who were prisoners of the Austrians and German officers during the First World War found when they were planning to create a vassal state of Ukraine under the protectorate of Austria-Hungary. Over the last 100 years, the plans haven't changed a great deal. Does this not look like impingement on the territorial integrity of Russia, I ask you? A staff member of the Department for Working with Religious Organizations gave me data about a sect called Slovo Zhizny, the Word of Life. The pastor of this sect in February and March 2022 was in hiding for 3 weeks, and when he was detained, he was found to have 3 American passports. 2 of them had one name and a third had a different name, but all of the passports were genuine. They weren't fake, and he was treated very well. He was allowed to leave the country. In 2023, in Zaporizhzhia, the terror began on the 3rd of January at 4 a.m. One of the city hospitals in Tokmak was shelled. 4 HIMARS missiles were launched and they damaged a part of the building as well as the maternity and pediatrics wards. People were killed and wounded, and the number of casualties is high, and it's still not been properly established. As a special correspondent, I was working directly on the scene of the terrorist attack, and the information can be found online. On the 4th of January, civilian infrastructure in Vasilyev around midday was hit by 6 HIMARS, 4 missiles at a time, and 2 subsequently. There were blast ammunition, frag ammunition. The Ukrainian armed forces waited for people to arrive before they launched the second wave. As a result, 24 people were injured and 4 were killed. All of this is photographed and videoed, and I worked as a stringer, and so I was directly on the scene, and this can be found online as well. Since 2014 in Donbass and also in Zaporizhzhia and Kherson Oblasts, according to various data, around 300 churches have been damaged, and many of them were almost destroyed, entirely destroyed, and there is shrapnel and damage everywhere. I directly witnessed attacks on churches of the canonical Orthodox Church, which I covered when I was working on the documentary film Thy Will. The Nikolai monastery near Ugledar was something I saw in 2024. At the time, after shelling from the Ukrainian armed forces, 7 people were killed, including monks and workers. But there wasn't any work going on there. The shells were sticking out of the ground and out of trees. There was shrapnel everywhere. Agricultural machinery was destroyed. Holes had been blown in walls and frescoes with the faces of saints on them. The monks said that they were burying people directly in the monastery, saying that if one of us is killed in a shelling, then at least we can bury them and saves anyone having to go outside again. The novitiate Afanasi showed us where another person had died. The monks lived and conducted services in the rubble of the church without electricity or water, and all of their supplies were provided by volunteers. The monastery of the icon of the Holy Mother, Regard the Humility, in Bielaya Gorda near Lysychansk, the rector, Mother Superior Ekaterina, told us about the atrocities that were committed and by other AFU units, as well as the Azov Brigade, who repeatedly they shot people, they conducted mock trials, they abused people. And so one nun who didn't speak Ukrainian, she hid a woman and she forced her to be quiet. The nun also witnessed the drugs that the Ukrainian battalions had, and the neo-Nazis were using these drugs and then committing atrocities. The nun, Sister Ekaterina, was injured herself during Ukrainian shelling, and now she can't really walk by herself. The nun's son died during Ukrainian shelling. In recent years, at the hands of the Kiev regime, almost everyone she knew has died. Currently, of the 13 residents, only 5 are left. 2 of them have had heart failure, and some have been forced to leave the monastery in fear. The Church of Ignatiy Bryanchanev in Donetsk, the rector, Alexander Namakonov, for many years of war, did not leave the city. He conducted services there. The shelling did not end even during my visit. You could see the shrapnel and the holes that had been blown in the walls. The area around it was covered with butterfly mines, and the Ukrainian armed forces were hitting it with drones, and there were mines in the cemetery. A targeted strike destroyed the school, the walls and the ceiling of that, and Father Alexander and his assistant were repeatedly shelled. The reconstruction work was proceeding slowly, and Ukrainian attacks continued. There's no water in the town at all. The Church of St. John of Kronstadt in Donetsk and Trudovskia now. This is unique because even during the worst shelling, services continued. Only part of it has now been rebuilt. There is shelling everywhere. The bulk of the building has been destroyed. Only the walls are still standing. Father Alexander is holding services with a small assistance. They feel abandoned, but at least they can pray. And despite the threat to their life, people are coming to the church. And they're coming from different parts of the country. In Avdiivka, the Church of St. Nicholas, the church was destroyed by the Ukrainian armed forces when they were attacking from the city. The Church of Archangel Michael was severely damaged, and Andrei did not leave the service during the hostilities, even when the other service personnel had left Avdiivka. At the time of my meeting, he couldn't hear very well. The day before, the UAF had attacked the church, and reconstruction work is currently underway. Returning to Tikhashka, I spoke to Irina, who lived in a 5-story residential building. She was trying to help the surviving citizens. The school where she worked had been totally destroyed. The building where she lived had been destroyed in a targeted strike. A woman died, and the rubble had not yet been fully cleared. One of Irina's other neighbors died in a UAF strike. and there's no water or electricity at all. In Luhansk, in Bakhmut district, the Intercession Mother of God Church, we met with the father there. His home had been destroyed. He was deprived of any property. He lived in the church. He was trying to organize a garden, and there was constant shelling of the church. The cupola was destroyed through a direct attack. The walls were damaged. Father Nikolai was the word Ukrainian had been crossed out on the sign of the church. He was being accused of supporting Moscow. The father called the UAFOFA, but for 25 years, Irina had been helping around the church. Her home was destroyed for no reason, and her son was killed by UAF forces just for leaving the house. In 2025, the cupola of the Bogoroditsa church was destroyed, and people tried to put it back together. The church's yard was hit by UAF shelling. Drones attacked the workers who were working to put it back together. Over the last 3 months, according to data from local residents, at least 15 civilians have been killed. On the 10th of February 2026, a Ukrainian drone attack on a funeral procession killed a well-known hero of my film, the rector of the Assumption Church, Father Sergei Klyakhin, and that was during the procession. The drone was clearly waiting for when the father would be there. As a result, 6 people were injured and Father Sergei died. The Kiev regime is liquidating the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Currently, 2 eparchies of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church have been liquidated in Lvov and Ivano-Frankovsk. Almost all of the churches have been transferred not to the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, but to the Greco-Catholic Church of Ukraine. I've seen traces of this on the Novorossiya roadway, also being shelled by drones of the Ukrainian armed forces. Akimov village in Zaporizhzhia, where a large number of citizens living, primarily old people and mothers with children, there are no soldiers in this town, are daily attacked by Ukrainian drones. This town is on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe. This is far from all of the evidence, and I could go on, but the time of my briefing is up. Thank you for your attention. I hope you were able to hear me.
I thank Ekaterina for your comprehensive testimony, and I'm sure you have a lot to add, and we call on members of the council to see your documentary.